Hello and a very warm welcome to ET Studio CFO Blueprint in association with ETCFO. I'm your host Divina Lason, and on this series, we're thrilled to bring you conversations with India's leading CFOs to help us get unique insights about the journey of the modern CFO. Now, CFOs in 2024 and beyond are tasked with navigating a complex landscape, balancing strategic priorities and addressing the key challenges to ensure the financial health and success of their organizations. So without further ado, on this episode, we're here to discuss the key challenges and priorities in 2024 and beyond, the CFO Playbook. Here to help us deep dive into this and much more is my pleasure to welcome a very esteemed guest, Pawan Agrawal, CFO, Marico Ltd. Pawan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Davina, for having me on the show. It's an absolute pleasure on my side.
Thank you. So, Pawan, let's just start at a kind of holistic level. We're here talking about the role of the CFO, how it's evolving, and of course, the challenges that you foresee as we come into 2024. So, in your perspective, in your experience, what would you say would be kind of some of the go-to challenges that a CFO needs to look out for in 2024?
See, I think if you look at in the last 2 to 3 years, what we've seen is there's been huge amount of uncertainty, volatility, and a lot of ambiguity, right? We're living in a world that's constantly changing and changing rapidly and becoming more and more unpredictable. So I think this volatility, as they say, VUCA, is going to continue, and we have to get used to it. Secondly, I think while inflation have come off the peaks, but I believe it will still remain above our comfort levels in 2024. While central bank has paused the rate increase, but the rate cuts are still distant. And therefore, I believe the cost of funding will remain elevated for a significant part of 2024. And therefore, managing the effects of inflation in terms of cost management and driving profitable growth is going to be one of the key challenges for CFOs.
Absolutely.
Now, also technological disruption, it's going to accentuate further. While it is always an opportunity from a business standpoint or digitization or automation standpoint, but at the same time, I believe cybersecurity concerns or the need to protect sensitive data always poses additional challenges. Lastly, I would say there's always been an increasing demand from the regulatory bodies to increase the governance and the compliance. And every day, new regulations are getting unleashed on the companies, and I think it's up to the CFOs to sort of manage those compliances. So I think these are some of the key challenges that I see for 2024. Now, if I have to say in terms of priorities, if I have to answer in one line, I think managing all these challenges itself will be the key priority for CFOs, right?
Absolutely.
But just to elaborate on that, I think any CFO's mandate is to drive sustainable, profitable growth. And in the context of the things that I've talked about, one thing which is, given the kind of uncertain times that we are living in, CFOs need to ensure that they have to be absolutely agile in their response. By that, what I mean is that you need to make your supply chain agile, your processes very, very flexible so that you can respond in a very quick time for any uncertain things that can happen. Relook at your decision-making system. How do you decentralize them so that response levels could be very, very quick? And I must say thanks to COVID that it has taught all of these to us, right? And the second priority, I think, for at any given point of time for any CFOs is to drive the cost management and cost optimization, find out what are the ineffective spends, where are the inefficiencies, weed them out, and plow them back in business for growth. Third, I would say is digitize and automate as much as you can. The first question you should ask is, can this be automated? Can we deploy RPA? And if you're able to do that, you can release a lot of bandwidth from the teams, which can then be focused on much more value-added stuff. And lastly, I would say, in terms of given the kind of challenges that we are facing, retaining and attracting top talent is going to be absolutely critical. I think there's a war in talent out there. The demand for top talent has always been there, but given that there is a alternate ecosystem growing in the form of startups, the demand for top talent has intensified further. So it's again an imperative for CFO to kind of attract and retain key talent. So I think these are some of the important priorities for CFOs in the coming years.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. We're going to deep dive into all of these very important points. But just to go one level deeper to what we're discussing, as a CFO, also, how do you approach navigating all the geopolitical uncertainty? As we're saying, of course, this is a VUCA world we're living in. So keeping in mind all the regulatory framework, the constant evolution of the same, expectation to keep up with it, how do you integrate also navigating the geopolitical
No, you're absolutely right.
instabilities?
Geopolitical uncertainties are here to stay.
Yeah.
And I think CFOs need to tackle them well. And given what we have seen in the last 3-4 years, I can say with a reasonable certainty that most of the evolved organization and CFOs have built a mindset and capability to tackle these kind of unprecedented scenarios. So like I said, I mean, few things that can be done. One is keep your systems and processes very agile, your supply chain very agile.
Yeah.
More importantly, let's say from a forecasting model, relook at the forecasting model. Can you work on a shorter range plans? Can you have a rolling plans? In corporates, we've been talking about having plan B in place, but maybe there could be certain circumstances when you need to have plan C as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's one element. Again, if a lot of your supplies is based on some of the international territories, then try and diversify your supplier base so that dependence on a particular country or region gets reduced. I think a lot of geopolitical uncertainties can also lead to a lot of forex risk, and therefore need to have right hedging strategy so that you can secure your receivables, your payables, and not expose the company financials to these kind of fluctuations. I think these are some of the things which companies should do.
Yeah, great. And so keeping all of this in mind, how do you also ensure that your financial goals and strategies are in alignment with the broader organizational goals? Is that an area of challenge, and how would you approach that in the coming year?
So if you ask me, I think financial strategies and organizational goals are the two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Unless and until the financial strategies are aligned with organizational goal, I don't think you can really drive success in business. Having said that, I think there are 3-4 things in my mind which should be done.
Okay.
So first and foremost, I think you need to define the right financial KPIs, and these KPIs should be linked to the business goals.
Yeah.
Number 2, I would say that these KPIs should be very, very specific, measurable. And at the same time, I would say that these should be aligned well with all the stakeholders. So there should be a shared understanding of what the important KPIs are. Third, I would say purely from a resource allocation standpoint, you should allocate resources in areas which are linked to your strategic priorities.
Yeah.
So I think these are some of the things by which you could align your strategic goals and financial priorities.
Yeah, great. That makes a lot of sense. Also, as you mentioned at the onset, in terms of your priorities, your strategies, how do you stay ahead of the curve when it comes to compliance, regulatory framework constantly evolving? So as a CFO, how can you sort of stay ahead of the curve when it comes to all the changes?
No, you're right. I think regulatory environment is getting tougher by the day. And all the regulatory bodies in India, be it SEBI or MCA, are expecting higher level of governance and trying to protect the interest of the minority stakeholders, and which is absolutely right. But it's not up to the CFOs that they have to ensure that the companies are always on the right side of the law. So I think first and foremost, it's very important to drive the compliance mindset and compliance culture in the organization.
Yes.
And I think a lot depends on the overall approach of the organization towards governance and what is the kind of ethos or tone which is set at the top. If each member of the organization appreciates that business has to be done in the most ethical and compliant way, I believe then managing compliance may not be a big task. So that's one.
Yeah.
Second, I believe there has to be a robust tracking mechanism of the evolving regulatory changes that are happening and keep evaluating in terms of what are the impacts it might have in your business. Thirdly, I would say there are a lot of compliance management tools which automate compliance, and there could be a lot of pre-alerts for the compliance task.
Sure.
And lastly, I believe a lot of training is required, not only to the finance team, but I believe while finance is at the forefront in terms of managing the compliance, but I think it's equally responsible to the entire organization for other functions. I mean, they also need to appreciate.
Absolutely.
So I think training on compliance for various teams is equally important. And I must also add that there should be regular audits of the compliance to ensure that we are on right track, and if there are any deviations, we can quickly come back on track.
Yeah. Also, Pawan, when it comes to the role of the CFO, of course, ensuring sustainable growth is very much fundamental as you've managed. How do you strike a balance between risk mitigation, risk management, all the things we've been discussing, but also innovation? Because ultimately, growth has to be linked invariably with innovation in any organization. So, as the CFO, how do you really sort of ensure smooth balance between all these factors?
So I think striking a right balance between risk management and innovation is a very delicate task, I must say. Because if you go too conservative on the risk management side, you run the risk of killing innovation.
Exactly.
And in my mind, that's a bigger risk.
Yes.
If you're not innovating
Yes,
in the
yes.
current world where modern day consumers is always looking for alternatives.
Yes.
And let's say if you go reckless or adventurous, you could also expose finance to very high risk. So I think in our organization, one of the values that we follow around innovation is bold ambition.
Okay.
Let me try and explain that. So it talks about think big, start small, which means take a prototype approach or a proof of concept approach, and once it is successful, then scale up fast. So which is think big, start small, and scale up fast.
Okay.
And if you look at it, this is a classical risk management framework which promotes innovation with a very calculated risk-taking approach.
Yes.
So therefore, organizations should have this approach of promoting innovation, fostering a culture of innovation,
Yes.
but with risk mitigants in place so that you don't go wrong from a financial standpoint. Having said that, I think there are 3-4 things which organizations should definitely do so that we can balance risk management and innovation. First, I think they should define the risk appetite.
Yeah.
So what is the risk appetite of the organization, which could vary from one organization to other organization.
Absolutely.
And more importantly, again, there should be a shared understanding of this risk appetite within the key stakeholders of the organization. Second, I think it's also equally important to prioritize. One should not really spread themselves thin in terms of making various choices. One should chase fewer bigger things that could have a significant impact if the innovation is successful. Yeah. And thirdly, from a resource allocation standpoint also, I would believe that one should have ROI mindset and do an evaluation of multiple projects, and where we believe that the probability of success and the impact of success, try to find out a sweet spot which can optimize this both, and then accordingly prioritize those projects.
Yes.
So I think, yes, these are some of the things which should be done to balance these two.
All right, great. And as you've mentioned, talent management is so key, right, in any vertical, but surely for the CFO, because you work across the entire organization. So are there any sort of tips that you could share with us in terms of the skill sets that you look for in financial professionals, also new skill sets, evolving skills that you think financial professionals should be aware of in the coming year?
Sure. So I think the financial landscape is evolving every day, and therefore it is important that finance professionals continuously upgrade and upskill themselves to stay relevant. Yes. So some of the key skills which I believe are relevant in times to come. Again, the first, I believe, ability to understand and add value to business is and always remain critical for a finance professional. Gone are the days where the finance managers were only expected to be doing books of accounts or managing finance, but they're now expected to have a strategic thinking, be a business partner, being able to collaborate with the business teams, and more importantly, business teams should be able to see value in them. So that's one. I think having analytical and technological skills, so that's again very important.
Yeah.
Technological disruption, which we spoke earlier, is only going to get accentuated further, and therefore having the right technical skills. What are the kind of emerging technology in the respective areas?
Yes.
For example, AI or RPA, etc.,
or
advanced analytic tools. So that is something which is important. Thirdly, I would say communication skills. For any finance professional, since they have to deal with multiple stakeholders, and that's the beauty of finance, I would say, because they have to deal with internal stakeholders like sales, marketing, operations, and if I talk about external stakeholders, it could be vendors, distributors, or shareholders, board, investors. So a good communication skill will always be an added advantage.
Definitely.
And lastly, I would say ability to manage polarities. And let me just elaborate on this. This is basically to manage the inherent tensions between the two poles, and how do you synchronize that? Just to give you an example, how do you manage short term and long term? Now you cannot say that I'm focusing only on short term and I will not be bothered about long term.
Of course, yeah.
Right. Similarly, for example, how do you balance speed and excellence? right? You cannot compromise one for the other.
Absolutely.
So therefore, the talent has to have both the bird's eye views as well as the worm's view.
Yes.
And ability to switch gears as and when needed.
Yes. As a CFO, how do you ensure that your financial goals are also very much in alignment with the broader organizational goals when it comes to sustainability and sustainable growth?
So if you ask me, looking sustainability purely from financial lens may not be entirely appropriate.
Okay.
Now, trying to map short-term financial goals with sustainability could be very, very challenging. And looking at financial returns from sustainability may not be immediate and may not be easily measurable. But having said that, I strongly believe that if you do business in a sustainable manner, it will create value for all stakeholders in the long run.
Yeah.
Right? There are now consumers also become environmentally conscious. Right? They're looking for products which are eco-friendly. They're looking for products which have recyclable packaging or using eco-friendly ingredients.
Yeah.
Consumer also looking for brands which have a purpose,
Yes.
right, which stand for certain cause.
Yes.
So if you ask me now, there is a business case for business to be sustainable, right? It enhances your brand reputation. It enhances your talent value proposition. For example, the Gen Z also prefer to work with those companies who are high on sustainability.
Yes.
If I think from an investor perspective, I think there's ESG investing as a theme has gained a lot of prominence.
Yes.
There are ESG funds who do not invest in companies who are not on high on sustainability. So I think sustainability is no longer an add-on, but it's an integral part of the business. It's intertwined with the strategy of the organization, and that's, in my mind, the opportunity, right? Because, as I said, there's a business case for a business to become sustainable.
Yeah.
And I strongly believe that the companies who will demonstrate strong commitment towards sustainability are likely to be more successful in future.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Pawan, for all these insights. Before we wrap up, just sort of a macro bird's eye view about how you see the FMCG sector faring in 2024. Also, we're coming on the budget, so any expectations that you have when it comes to what the government will announce. But yeah, overall, how do you see FMCG faring in 2024?
So for the last 1 or 2 years, FMCG growth has been largely price-led, and the volume growth has been quite tepid. But after 5-6 quarters of volume decline, we've seen volume growth having come back in the first 2 quarters of this fiscal. And more importantly, I think it has been witnessing improving trajectory. While rural has seen extended stress, but given the government spending and range-bound inflation, I believe that rural should start catching up with the urban growths. Again, from a category standpoint, foods has been pretty resilient, while home and personal care categories was struggling. But I believe now there should be meaningful revival of the HPC category as well. Okay. So all in all, in a nutshell, I would say that I'm quite positive about the demand outlook for 2024, and the companies should focus on category development through penetration or driving premiumization through innovation, and expanding its reach through distribution, and try to build drivers for sustainable volume-led growth. Right. So that's my expectation on 2024. Okay, great. And budgetary expectations, anything you can share? I think the 1st of February, it's going to be vote on account or interim budget. When the final government forms, then the full-fledged budget will come on. I believe the government has been pushing a lot of reforms. So I would expect that thing to continue. And it should be a well-balanced growth-oriented budget, which we've seen in the past with the focus on inclusive development. Yeah. And I think in the last couple of budgets, there has been a lot of focus on infrastructure spending. And a push to infrastructure spending has a multiplier effect on growth that can lead to job creation, and that will have a positive impact on the demand. Yes. So I would expect the government should focus on increasing the jobs in both rural and urban, increasing the rural incomes, enhance availability of credit, and that should aid the overall consumption sentiment. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Before we wrap up, Pawan, I have one request. I'm sure all of our viewers would love to know a little bit more about you as a leader, both in the boardroom and out of the boardroom. So we have a little rapid fire round for you, if that's all right. Yeah, we'll just one-word answers, whatever comes to mind instinctively. Great. Okay, so to kickstart, if you could describe your approach to finance in one word, what would it be and why? I would say finance is lifeline of business. Wow, great. That says it all, actually. If you were not a CFO, what would you have been? A movie critic.
Really? Okay, great, interesting. What's the most unexpected skill or hobby that you have that has helped you in your role as a CFO?
I don't know, unexpected, but one of my hobbies is to go for a run.
Running,
And I think if I go for my morning run, it sets up my day.
Sure.
And gives me a lot of energy to tackle all the challenges that the day throws at me.
Yeah, excellent. Discipline. If finance were a superhero, what superpower would it have?
I think changing the trajectory of business.
Yeah, that's a big one. What is your favorite way to pass time when you're not working?
Spending time with my daughters.
Yes, excellent. If you were to write a book, what would it be about?
Very honestly, I don't see myself writing a book.
Okay.
But if I were to write a book, I think it would be about mistakes to avoid in your career.
Wow. Good one. If you had to choose a famous personality to be your financial advisor, who would it be?
Oh. I'm deeply inspired by Mr. Nilesh Shah,
Okay.
who is the Kotak AMC CEO. I think he simplifies complex things in a very powerful manner.
Okay.
So it's very, very simple yet very powerful.
Great. Thank you. What's the weirdest financial term or jargon that you've had to explain to someone who's not in the finance field?
Not exactly term, but I would say explaining to a few people as to why bond prices and interest rates are inversely related.
Yeah.
Or second would be, let's say, cost of equity.
Yeah.
Very difficult for people to really understand that.
Sure, absolutely. And what's the most innovative financial tool that you've come across?
I think in the recent past, there have been a lot of tools in terms of automating
Yeah.
a lot of stuff that the finance team does. And I think it releases significant amount of time, bandwidth. So that's something which is quite amazing.
Okay. And finally, one reason why you love finance?
As I said, finance is the lifeline
Lifeline,
of business.
yes,
And I
yes.
think I've always been good with maths and numbers, and probably that drove me to make a career in finance.
Okay, great. Pawan, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing all of your insights, your knowledge, and also giving us a little candid view on who you are as a leader. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to have you here today.
Pleasure's been all mine. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, on that note, that's all we have for you in this power-packed episode of ET Studios CFO Blueprint in association with ETCFO. But do stay tuned for more such in-depth conversations where we chat with India's leading CFOs who inspire us with their success stories, their leadership, and their unique insights. Until next time, many thanks for watching.